morning. My name is Melissa Adams. I'm a labor and delivery nurse at Methodist Hospital, and this is my husband of 20 years, Brian Adams. He's a banker and he serves in the Air Force Reserve as an intel officer. We are also parents to two very energetic boys, one very naughty dog, and one fluffy hamster, and one sweet, precious little girl who's waiting for us in heaven. She's who we are here to talk about today. Our little Maddie was the result of in vitro fertilization and had been frozen as an embryo for 6 years. It's complicated, but she's technically 4 months older than her 6-year-old brother. Maddie May was born the morning of August 27th, 2022, at 1 pound 8 ounces. Chronic hypertension and severe superimposed preeclampsia meant elevated blood pressures and a potential seizure for me. For Maddie, it meant less oxygen and nutrients from the placenta causing growth restriction. For both of us, it meant a C-section at 28 weeks. 24 hours on a magnesium drip for the nerve protection and 2 steroid shots for her lungs and a consult with the neonatologist later, we were ready to meet our little girl. We were told she had a 93% chance of surviving. She would just need to grow in a box for a little while. I wasn't scared or nervous because I knew Maddie and I were in good hands. And also, my anesthesiologist gave me something really good in my IV. Thankfully, I didn't notice Maddie's rough start. She needed to be intubated immediately, and then her heart rate dropped really low. The nurses and doctors and respiratory therapists were incredible. Maddie was stabilized and was towed to the NICU. During my pregnancy, I connected with Maddie in a way only mothers can. Once she was out of my womb and my body, Brian was able to finally see who I held for 28 weeks.
I remember sitting upstairs in the hospital room as Melissa's recovering from surgery. I just kind of looked at her and said, you know, I've had a pretty easy life. I didn't mean it at the time, like what it meant. I kind of meant I've never really grieved. Like I've been sad before, but I've never felt deep grief. I honestly don't know why I said it. I was still hanging on to that 93% of survival. But that wasn't God's plan. I was confident that Maddie was going to come home and meet her brothers pretty soon. But God had other plans for her life. After 19 days in the NICU, Maddie went to be with Jesus in heaven. Since then, there's been a lot of ups and downs. We've gotten through this past year by hanging on to what is true and the promises of God. In Romans 8:28 it says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. It doesn't mean that I don't hurt or I don't grieve anymore. Or when someone asks me how many kids I have, it's not like a punch in the gut where I'm going to say 2 kids, but I know deep down it's 3. Despite the grief, God has used her for good. Even though she was taken to heaven after just 19 days here on the earth, God has used her life for good. Her brothers talk about heaven all the time. In fact, we were driving home a couple months ago from Oklahoma, and Melissa and Luke were sleeping, and I was just listening to music, and Max just goes, Dad, can you turn the music off for a second? I need to pray. It's like, okay. So I just let him pray. I'm just thinking, man, I am such a good dad. My 6-year-old's in the back, you know, praying. And he gets done, he's like, okay, Dad. I'm like, what'd you pray about, buddy? And he goes, well, Dad, when I get to heaven, when I open my mouth, I want lasers to come out of my eyes. I don't know where it comes from a 6-year-old. But it does say in the Bible that no eye has seen, nor ears heard, or human heart has conceived what God has prepared for those who love him. So I don't know, but maybe, buddy, we all have laser eyes in heaven. I guess we'll find out. Well, my 2 boys have a more eternal perspective on life than most adults. They know that life here on earth is short, and that those that believe and receive Jesus as Lord and Savior will spend eternity in heaven. And for them, they'll get to meet their sister for the first time when they get there. God also promised he would never leave us. We got the honor and privilege of holding our daughter for the first and last time on September 14th, 2022. As we're holding her in our arms, struggling to take her final breaths, Jesus was there with us as well. He was holding us. He was there in the room with us. And he's been with us this entire year. Another promise to God, as she took her last breath, she went instantly from our arms to the arms of Jesus. God loved and knew Maddie before she was born. He knit her together in Bliss's womb. Maddie didn't have to endure the troubles of this life. God called her and welcomed her home just after 19 days. She's no longer having trouble breathing. She's no longer in pain. She is in the perfect place. She's in heaven with Jesus. The final promise to God that I hold on to is that we'll be with her again one day. In 2 Samuel, we find David, a man after God's own heart, facing a similar situation that many of us have faced. His son was struck with a deadly illness. For 7 days, David fasted. He laid on the ground and prayed and begged God to heal his son. But after 7 days, his son had died. When the child died, he got up, washed himself, changed his clothes, and went to the tabernacle to worship the Lord. When he got back home, he was served food and he ate. And his advisors were amazed, like, how could you do this? And this was his reply. He said, I fasted and wept while the child was alive. For I said, perhaps the Lord will be gracious to me and let the child live. But why should I fast when he is dead? Can I bring him back? I will go to him one day. He cannot return to me. Melissa and I hold on to the promise that we'll go to Maddie one day. Thank you.
And now, Reverend Austin Frederick will introduce the presentation of names. We ask that parents form 2 lines, here and here, and the rest of the family will stand when they say their baby's